Hello, this is the Linux Gamer, and today is the 9th birthday of KSP, so I'm obviously going to make a KSP video. I couldn't think of anything too creative, so here's my new Delta for Super Heavy, or more accurately, Ultra Heavy, because on the forum post about it, somebody actually left a very helpful comment that I'll put on screen now about various it had actual diagrams of proposed Delta and Atlas Super Heavy lift upgrades. So this is the Delta 4 Ultra Heavy. It's one core stage with 6 core stages strapped around its boosters. I did include crossfeed. The second stage is a little wider, and it has an RL60 engine, which I simulated with the skiff, which is actually meant to be a J2, but whatever. And the payload is just the biggest S3 Kerbodyne tank, so the biggest orange tank there is. So it is in fact capable of bringing a heavier payload than those two Rockamax orange tanks I did in the first Delta 4 Super Heavy video to orbit. Anyway, I'm going to do a little time acceleration just to make this easier for me. This rocket is a little wobbly, so you have to be careful of that. But it actually steers pretty well with the massive gimbal on the vectors, which I chose because they're the Space Shuttle main engines. And the Delta 4 engines are the RS-68, which is based off the Space Shuttle main engine. It's supposed to be like a cheaper version. Came from the National Launch System concept originally, which, as you may remember from the shuttle-derived vehicles, was basically 80s SLS. Anyway, it ended up getting used on the Delta 4 rocket, so that's why I'm using vectors, even though they're not, like, perfect analog, but no engine in KSP is a perfect analog, obviously, but I felt this worked pretty well. So, yeah, what else is there to talk about? I guess since it's the 9th birthday of KSP, I'll talk a bit about my history in KSP. So, I first learned of KSP when I went over to a friend's house for dinner with my family. And after dinner, I went up with him to his room and we played some games. And one of the games he played was KSP, and that's how I learned about KSP. Shortly afterwards, I got the demo, which was actually easy to get back then. It was the 0.18 demo, and I really liked it, so I got the game, the full game, like about 2 months later, and I really enjoyed it. I consistently upgraded for about 2 versions, so I skipped a lot of versions. I did 1.18, or 1.18, 0.18, 0.19, 0.20, 0.23, 0.25, oh, there go the boosters, and 1.0, and then from there I started actually consistently upgrading. And I kind of sucked at the game initially. I couldn't even really get into orbit, although I could do interplanetary travel since I just launched straight up to get onto an escape trajectory and then would, once in solar orbit, burn prograde or retrograde to get to other planets. Horrifically inefficient, but that's how I got my first Duna landing. My first, obviously, one-way Eve landing, which I then tried to follow up with about 2 hours of trying to swim Jeb to a shore. Eventually gave up after 2 hours of swimming at 4 times regular speed to get to any land mass, so don't repeat that mistake if you're a beginner and you land your rocket one way in the shores and the oceans of Eve. Just don't try and swim to the shores, it's not going to work out. And, okay, first stage is nearing burnout. I'm actually going to cut the time acceleration for a bit so the rocket doesn't wobble itself to pieces. And there we go. I'm assuming that any real Delta IV Ultra Heavy would just actually immediately ignite the second stage engine, but I'm 6 minutes away from apoapsis, which is a lot for KSP, so I'm just gonna coast to apoapsis and light the engine then. Now this engine also has a nozzle extension that I built. I'm not sure if the real RL60 would have had one, but the RL10B that is used on Delta IV upper stages does have a nozzle extension, so I decided might as well add one for this. So light the engine, extend the nozzle, and of course I launched right into the dark. Oh well, blow the fairing. And it's actually a very short burn to get into orbit since the first stages did pretty well. Obviously there's a massive payload on here, so yeah, it's having some trouble. But this stage actually, with 0 payload, that had like 4 kilometers per second of delta V, because the skiff is a reasonably efficient engine and it's got a lot of fuel. Anyway, I'm in a stable orbit now, so let's warp to dawn. And, oh my gosh, what is this on the front of the rocket? Happy 9th birthday, KSP. And for some reason I assumed control of the stage, but thanks for watching. Goodbye.